I'm Technomancer, and I'm creator of Crossroads, and this is the tutorial on all the stuff you can use Alchemy for. So the previous two videos were like the fundamentals of Alchemy and also how to make all this stuff, and this is the video where we explain actually how to use this stuff as an actual useful thing you want. So there's an enormous amount of things to cover. So we're going to go pretty fast. Some things we're going to show in a bit more detail. We're going to show them in no particular order. Some of them are available much earlier than others. You're always going to want to check the recipe. First thing I'm going to show off are these density plates and also cavorite. So there's a few variants. The blue variant is basically a gravity plate, exactly what you'd expect. If you stand in front of it, it pulls you in. Now, these things are directional. It only affects the direction it's like along. So if I stand on any other side, it doesn't affect me, and it's only this side where it pulls me in. And I can just wrench this like any other block. There's also an orange variant that pushes you, the anti-density plate, anti-gravity. Both of these will not affect you while you hold shift. Both of these work through walls. Here's the thing about gravity, works through walls. They do not, however, work through this stuff called cavorite. So even though there's a density plate on that side, if I stand on this side of the cavorite wall, it won't affect me. If I'm on this side, it pulls me in. Cavorite can be pushed and pulled by pistons. It is not a tile entity. Now, several of these can be stacked together to multiply the effect if I wanted to. To make it even more effective. I could, let's say, have 3 of them. That would push me 3 times as fast. There is a maximum range on these. Stacking them doesn't increase the range, it increases the speed, the acceleration. Okay. Atmospheric Attenuator. This is a sort of a multi-block, but not really. This is a way of transferring forge energy, Fe, universally for free. Literally teleports it. So if you place one down, to get it to work, it needs a stack of 4 iron bars on it. So 1, 2, 3, 4. It won't work without them. And we can shift right click with a wrench to go from blue or orange. So we're going to take it blue. And we're just going to give it some electricity. So if I just dump some electricity, if we look at here, look at this. If I use an omnimeter, 0 charge in the atmosphere. So it shows us the charge in the machine and the charge in the atmosphere. And you can see the atmosphere has a huge capacity. Now if I start dumping electricity in, it dumped all of that at once. It goes very, very fast if given the opportunity. So you can see every time it drains the entire Leyden jar and puts it all in the atmosphere. Now let's give it an actual continuous source so we can, I don't know, so we can see the animation a little bit. So let me just do this quickly. This is just a cheaty rotary source. Don't worry about this. So at this point we should... There we go. It's producing power very slowly. And you can see it's building up and then jolt, and then it goes, the atmosphere charge increases. Now, literally any of these anywhere in the world can draw from that. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you can see it pulled electricity. So it charged itself up using the atmosphere. They all share the atmosphere, and they can all put to it or pull from it, and there's no loss. Every player shares the same pool. So if you're on a server, everyone can contribute to and take from the same shared pool, and it works between dimensions. The only thing is that if the atmosphere, which has a huge capacity, gets above 50%, there starts being some environmental consequences. So circuits can read from this how full the atmosphere is. And if it gets above 50%, bad things start happening. Obviously, this can all be turned off in the config. The consequences aren't too bad. What you're mainly going to see is additional lightning during storms. Eventually, you're going to see lightning even in clear weather. And at really ridiculously high charges, creepers will spawn charged, like they'll spawn as charged creepers. But if that starts to happen, anyone can stop it by building an attenuator and just draining all the free power. So it's not too bad. Okay. The flying machine is an unusual item in that it's not an alchemy item and it's not a technomancy item. It's a technomancy and alchemy item. This device requires ingredients from both alchemy and technomancy to make. It actually appears in both book entries, but I'm going to cover it now. So if you're in single player, you can do multiple paths and make this yourself. If you're in multiplayer, you might need to work together with another person, maybe trade or something. You place it down sort of like a boat. And there's two keys, forward and backwards. So I'm using W and S. And they spin this wheel you can see, the giant wheel in the middle. W spins it one way, S the other. And I sort of get pulled in the blue direction. It's a bit janky. You can't really hover. And it's meant to be like this. It's free infinite flight, but it's not very fast. A lot of people just prefer Elytras. It's sort of a weird optional thing. The Tesla ray is a weapon, and it's an electrically powered one. So to use this, I need a Leyden jar in my offhand. Or if you have a Baubles mod installed, you can put it in a Baubles slot. I'm going to use my offhand. And the Leyden jar needs to be charged. And this death ray, every time I right-click it, every time I fire it, rather, is going to drain power from the Leyden jar, and it's going to do an attack. Now, let's get some very, very nasty enemies. What you're going to see is it does an electrical arcing attack. So it's an AoE, basically, because I can attack a whole bunch of pigs at once. Sets them on fire. If these were like, it also does lightning to them, so if they were like creepers, they'd be charged creepers style of thing. Now you might notice that it has an attack cooldown, just like a sword does. If you try and fire it too fast, it does basically no damage and it doesn't arc. But it's quite good as an AoE weapon. Very good at crowd control. And it works on players as well. Tesla coils, continuing our theme of electrical stuff. You might recall that Tesla coils had quite a few flaws. These were our way of moving FE around within Crossroads. They weren't very fast, they have loss, they don't have very good range. They have a lot of things that we'd kind of like to improve. Right? And there was loss when that happened. Now, if we look at the head, it tells us the range, the spark amount, and the loss. Now, with Alchemy, we can actually make several upgraded heads that do different things. The long-range one, so you can see all their stats in the tooltip. The long-range one can send to other Tesla coils up to 32 blocks away. The high-intensity one sends a much bigger electrical jolt, so it transfers faster, basically. The efficient one has no loss. So to demonstrate this sort of thing, let me just show you how this works. You replace the Tesla coil head on the one that's sending the power. And now I can go all the way over here. The receiver can be a normal Tesla coil head. It doesn't really matter. And now it is a massive, massive range. And we've improved the range just like that. Now, there's a couple ones I want to highlight, the decorative and the offensive. The decorative one is, as the name would imply, purely decorative. It just does this. It does not transfer power. In fact, it wastes it. This can still receive power from another Tesla coil. It just can't transmit it. But this is actually fairly... It doesn't drain power too quickly. It actually uses it quite slowly. but, you know, that's just a decorative option. There's also the offensive one, which once again cannot transfer power. It can receive it still, but it will attack things nearby, including the person who places it, so be careful of that. So it's a automated way of killing things. And as you can see, it's actually quite effective, though it doesn't arc. So, you know, use that as you will. There's also a Voltas generator. Now, in Crossroads pre-Alchemy and Technomancy, the only electricity source is the dynamo, which is a rotary, it converts rotary power to electricity. It's okay. It's actually pretty good, but it's not huge amounts of power. The Voltas generator can produce a massive amount of power, but it runs on Voltas, like that chemical Voltas that we had to produce before. And it actually doesn't take the item form, it takes the chemical form. So you need, let's say, to be producing automatically Voltas somewhere. And it will just, if I connect this, use this to make power. And it's very, very strong. All this is configurable, obviously. You can turn it up, turn it down. But this thing is able to make 2,000 FE a tick, potentially, if you can feed it fast enough. So it's a much more powerful power source, though in base Crossroads, there's not really much of anything that can use all that power. Okay, that's all the like simple. I don't want to say toys, but toys. Let's get on to some of the more detailed stuff. If we use Densus, that is a material that was used to make those density plates. It has another use, which is it's actually a heat cable insulator. Remember, our heat cables could have various insulators with different stats, like wool, ice, obsidian, and ceramic. Densus lets us use that Densus material, making it something you want in bulk if possible. And it's very, very good heat cables. These cables have no loss at all. That is tremendous. They're the only cables with no loss. So if I were to use, let's say, cheats to increase the temperature of this, it's not where there's no heat loss there at all. It's staying at 70 degrees perfectly. Similarly, they don't melt until they reach 10,000 degrees C, which is tremendously hot. So they're unequivocally the very best heat cables. But now to get on to the real meat of the stuff you can do with alchemy, which all involves various reagents and releasing them into the world in some way or another, which is where the real power lies, other than the being able to manufacture diamonds and whatnot, which you can just see how to do in JEI. And this is a little more complicated, but we're going to try and break it down for you. Let's get a file, and I'm going to use the crystal ones, because let's just not have any accidents. There are various chemicals that have effects, and if we look at their use in JEI, we're going to see, oh, effect, toxic. Or if I look at something like cinnabar, aka redstone, effect, none. So when a chemical is released in the world, and there's various ways that can happen, it'll do whatever effect it says in JEI. Now, those effects are explained in more detail in the book, but some of those effects are quite powerful, or quite destructive, or quite useful, or something else. Now, they can be released in a variety of ways. The main accidental way is you have a laboratory accident of some sort, you misclick with something, a bottle breaks because you put something in it that it can't handle, like you put a Philosopher's Stone in glass, and everything in it gets released, something like that. Intentional ways include using chemical vents, or pouring out the chemical, or throwing a shell. Oops, didn't want to fall down here. So let's just show, now the one chemical I'm going to use to show this off quite heavily is chlorine, because it has a very, very obvious effect. If I grab a stack of chlorine, if I put one in a bottle here, you can right-click, first of all, with a file to release it. So it'll pour out the chemical. And if I were in survival, this actually consumes the contents of the bottle. And wherever I right-click is where the effect will happen. Now, this is frozen chlorine. It's not real. It's basically I'm just pouring ice on the floor. Anything that's in solid form on its own is just going to do the effect on the one block I click on. Not very exciting, not really very useful. I mean, it can be, depends on what you're doing. In liquid form, if we just, it's going to be quite difficult to get liquid chlorine. Hold on, what's the, how, when does, okay, I need to get it below, keep it below -35. Just a moment. Because chlorine turns into a gas very easily. I'm just going to say, I'm going to do this. I'm actually going to get a flask for this. See, it's already turned into a gas again. Just a moment, I'm setting up a little scheme that should hopefully keep the temperature where I want it to be. There we go. And this should keep my chlorine nice and liquid as I wanted. So let's get a bunch in here. For the liquid, it doesn't just drop on the floor, it actually splashes out. As you'd expect a liquid, when you pour it out, it sort of spreads everywhere. So everywhere those particles are going, it's doing the effect. Now, let me get a nice test subject. Now, chlorine, being as it is a quite nasty, toxic gas, anything that touches it isn't going to live very long. Now, the more liquid there is in this bottle, the farther it's going to splash, so it didn't splash very far. I can hit a couple of them if they're all clustered up. There we go. If I were to actually put more in this bottle, it would go farther. How much is in here? 20. Perfect. See, now we're able to hit pretty much the entire pig pen. Okay, maybe not the entire pen, but you get the idea. But it spreads out a bit farther. Now, if it's a gas, which I am of course about to show off, okay. Now, gases have a much larger range. Again, they go all over the place like liquids do, but it's actually quite hard to pour out the chlorine in gas form without hitting myself because the range is so much higher. But with this, I actually can hit the entire pig pen at once. I have, in fact, just gassed the pigs, and they're all going to die shortly. So, hotter chemicals, you know, different phases are going to spread out more. Another thing is if you have a mixture of a liquid and a solid. So let me take an example of that. Is a very, very useful one is Aqua Regia. And that's exactly what I'm about to show off. Is if I take, let's say, yeah, okay. I'm going to get a thing of water. And I'm also just going to get a thing with no water, so I can compare and contrast here. And we're going to put some Aqua Regia in. Now, Aqua Regia has this effect that's very important, which I've shown off before, which I'll cover again, noble acid. Now, this combines the acid effect, many things have the acid effect, and we'll show that fully later, with the ability to dissolve bedrock. So now this has one solid Aqua Regia and water, and this has one solid Aqua Regia and no water. If we go down to bedrock and I pour out the one without water, it will destroy bedrock and make it drop a bedrock dust, which is a useful ingredient. That's what Aqua Regia does, that noble acid thing. Now, if you have solid and liquid mixed together, the solid effect will hit everything the liquid touches. The salt is dissolved in the water. So if I show this, everything that water touched, that Aqua Regia salt-filled water, got dissolved like the bedrock did, see? Hit a bunch of stuff. So I only needed one Regia salt to hit, in this case, 5 bedrock. But we could do better. Now, gases won't carry solids the way liquids do. So they'll actually, the gas will disperse and the solids will only apply at one spot, so there's a limit to this, but still, it's quite handy. Now, let's just show off a few useful effects. And we're just going to do them quickly. And in no particular order other than the ones they appear in JEI, salt and alchemical salt will kill plants, very similarly to how salt blocks do. Do I have any plants left? Yes, I do. If I just sort of right-click it out, you can see it just kills the plants. Nothing too fancy. And that's the, I think, what is that called? The salinate effect? Kill plants. Okay, nothing too, no, I was thinking too fancily. Now, a couple of these we're going to come back to because they're quite special. So basically all the higher tier ones. Philosophers, again, something we're going to come back to. All the acids other than Aqua Regia have the acid effect. I had it a moment ago. Hold on, here we go. Which basically just damages things. It's not nearly as strong as chlorine is, but it just does a little bit of instant damage. And they corrode metals, which is not a very useful thing, but it's a little detail nonetheless. So if you have like some blocks of iron, it drops the ingots. It's not super important. It's more a way of hurting things, is what it is. And all the acids do that. The Philosophers and Practitioner stones are unusual in that they'll actually drop the item on the ground. And this is actually quite an unfortunate little disaster because those items, the Practitioner and Philosopher's Stone, actually destroy blocks that they touch. So that'll quickly melt a hole through the floor. Let's see. Again, that's too special. Sulfur dioxide is actually sort of medical. It will cure certain debuffs, hunger being the main one, and it will also cure zombie villagers. So I'm not quite sure how to spawn a zombie villager in this game. Give me a moment. I know there is a command. Slash summon. It's definitely not just zombie villager, is it? Oh wow, it is. Okay. So if we do this guy, you can see he's shaking and crying, and he'll be a healthy villager if he doesn't walk into fire. Thank you very much. Nope, that is the wrong command. Okay, if he were not stepping into the sunlight, he would be cured in a couple minutes. So that's just a way to trigger zombie villager curing, and which could be automated with a chemical vent. Because that vent is a way to release chemicals in the world automatically. Don't mind me, just quickly skimming through them. Chlorine, we've already seen, will give things a massive number of debuffs and very much give you a bad day. Oil of vitriol is an acid. And Voltas. Voltas is the electrical one, the charge alignment one. It might have been a little hard to see. Let me go in F5 mode there. This is a gas, so it's occurring in a dispersed form, but basically it just AoE attacks anything near where it comes out. So all of these pigs are dead now. Voltas is very efficient at killing things. Voltas and Chlorine are the two killiest chemicals. Because it just releases this cloud of electricity that just kills everything. It also spams your screen with particle effects, but that's another discussion. Now the really, really strong chemical reactions, now the ones I'm about to show are a little bit stronger. In fact, they can be disabled in the config. Many of them. Not all of them, but many of them, because I'm going to recommend that if you are planning to host a public server, that you disable Ignis Infernum. I'm going to strongly insist that you would disable Ignis Infernum, and that you think about possibly disabling Philosophers. If you're in single player, have fun with these. Because this is where it gets very destructive. Philosophers was one of our is this chemical that's always this little flame, and which was one of our elemental ones, is basically elemental fire. It releases this giant cloud of fire, which just consumes anything it touches and spawns fires everywhere. It will eat the world if you let it. And the more philosophen in this bottle, the bigger it goes. Now, this is where I talk about damping powder. This is basically a fire extinguisher. These things are called flame clouds with philosophen spawns, and if you right-click with damping powder, it consumes the powder and instantly stops that flame cloud. Now, I would strongly suggest that if you've got philosophen enabled, which you have by default, keep some damping powder just like in a chest in wherever you're doing alchemy, because if you have like a little accident and you accidentally right-click with a bottle of philosophen in the middle of your lab, like this, it would be quite bad if you couldn't stop it before it ate through all of your nice equipment. Okay? Now, philosophen is also considered a distinct phase of matter, like fire, like gas, liquid, and solid, because this is fire. You can see the little flames in there. And as a result, we can pull some trickery here. It can actually carry effects. So anything mixed with philosophen, the entire flame cloud will do that effect. Okay, so let's say we mixed. Now, we might not want our flame cloud, however, to eat through the world. That would be quite unfortunate, right? So let's say we had, for example, that effect of, sure, we want to kill a lot of plants in the area with salt, but we don't want to just eat through the world. So we'd like to be able to carry the effect with philosophen without eating the blocks. Well, first of all, if philosophen is mixed with specifically alchemical salt, normal salt will not work. It will still do the flame cloud, but it won't destroy any blocks. So I want to repeat this because this is important. This bottle has a little bit of alchemical salt in it and philosophen. If there's any alchemical salt mixed in, philosophen won't damage blocks. This is basically safe. We can still stop it with the damping powder if we want, like that, but it's safer. I'm even safe enough to release it here. It's fine. I'm not concerned. Let's stop it, though. So now, let's carry some effects with it. So, I said I wanted to kill plants in a huge area, but I don't want to damage the blocks. So I add one regular salt to do the salt effect, one alchemical salt to stop the philosophen damaging blocks, and the rest is philosophen to create the flame cloud that'll kill plants. Did I leave any plants here? Yes, but not many. And as you can see, everywhere the flame cloud touches, plants die, but everything else is unharmed. Now, this is not the most useful application, but it's not too bad. What we're of course going to do is use something a little more oomph. For example, one little bit of Voltas mixed in here. Now we've now got a flame cloud that electrocutes anything it comes near. So if we had a whole bunch of enemies, we could shock them all. If we had chlorine in there, I think you might get the idea, right? This giant cloud, this massive cloud that top poisons everything. And if we had chlorine and Voltas and the one alchemical salt to stop it destroying blocks and a bunch of philosophen, nothing is going to live. Like, I'm in creative mode, but anything that was not in creative mode is going to die to this because they're going to get a massive number of debuffs. They're going to get withered, they're going to get shocked, and it's going to leave the building standing. But this isn't only destructive. There are other things we can mix it with that are non-destructive. Before we do that, oh yeah, let's do that first. So there's a couple of effects that I said, well, they're a little more complicated. We're going to get to those. We're going to do them now. So for example, Aether. Effect, create planes. What does this do, I wonder? Well, if we go over here, take a look in my F3 menu, you can see that this is a desert biome. And I don't know if you can see my cursor, but it says desert biome where I'm standing. If I right-click with this gas releases, and suddenly I'm in a plains biome. It's also turned a lot of sandstone to smooth stone. This is terraforming. We can change the biome with certain chemicals. Certain chemicals change the biome, which is an interesting little effect to have. So there's not many things in the game or in mods that let you change biomes. This will. It also changes blocks to match the new biome. So we were in a desert and we turned it into a plains. Well, plains biomes don't really have lots of sand and sandstone, but they do have regular stone and grass, so it'll create that. It will also change liquids. For example, if we had some lava, lava doesn't really match a plains biome. It turns it into water, as you can see. And the other thing it will turn is lots of crystalline blocks. This might make a little less sense because there's no really crystal block native to plains biomes. But things like glowstone, prismarine packed ice will get transformed as well. This might not make a lot of sense here, but there are certain biomes where you would expect to see stuff like that, where like if you're in the nether, you would see all of your glowstone turn into something a little more biome appropriate. But you can't only go to plains. That would be a little silly. Fusus. If I look here, creates an ocean biome. Now, Fusus is a solid at this temperature, so it's only doing the one block, instead of Aether being all gaseous. But hey, we're getting prismarine, and we're in a deep ocean biome. We're making clay, we're making prismarine, we're changing the biome. I can't really right-click on the water, but if I could, it would be distilled water. It'll actually distill the water, don't ask. And it'll make sea lanterns, which matches the biome a little more. But of course, I'd like to terraform on a much larger scale. It's kind of inconvenient that I can only do a single block at a time. That's not really what I want. If I want to terraform, we're going to do it on a real scale. And of course, you should be able to guess where this is going by now. That means we're going to use a flame cloud to carry around our chemical that's doing the terraforming. So, Philosogen, aka our fire. Add the Fusus. Take it in a bottle, and we've got loads of Philosogen, dash of salt, and the Fusus. And voila! So we can terraform in a region. But this is not the only one. There are other ones. Stasisol similarly has such an effect. It will create tundra and snow. So packed ice, snow biome, and such. Running around doing all this. We could also do it to some crystalline stuff and make, is this blue ice, I believe? There's another one. There is Eldrine, which creates a nether biome, if I recall correctly. Let me check that. Yes, creates a nether biome. So you can actually have the nether in the overworld, which does let you create hell mobs. Use that wisely. Or don't. I don't really care. Soul sand. We can turn water into lava. That's the wrong one. This bottle. And so on. So there's a whole bunch of biomes we can make this way. And we can do terraforming. Now, of course, I've got to show this off. Now, we're going to be using something called shells, which we've not really talked about before. Shells, just like flasks and just like vials, can be put in these glassware stands, and we can interact with them with bottles and such in the same way. The only difference with these is that unlike a vial where we pour it out, what will I have in this if I right-click on you? We add a dash of salt to that before I start burning the whole place down. Okay. Is that you throw them like a grenade. And it will actually break the bottle. So if I were in survival, I'd need a source of these shells because it will actually break the bottle. So I need more crystal or glass. So now I've got like a terraforming grenade. Or if you want a a chemical gas releasing grenade, or whatever else you want, because you can put pretty much anything in these. Now, of course, I have a bunch of shells prepared. What's this one? This is Voltas. Oh yeah, if you want to kill things with a little electrical shot, that would be a great weapon. But this one should be... Yes, this is my snow biome terraforming. We demonstrate that if I come to the nether, you can see I've done this before, I can throw one of these, and thus I am terraforming the nether. We've got ice in the nether, and because it changes the biome, we can actually have water in the nether because we've actually changed the biome, and this is biome-based. What biome is this? Hold on. Snowy tundra. Hold on. Okay, I just took a screenshot like a genius. So if I were to pour out some aether, which creates water, the water created through this is allowed to exist in the nether, like that. There we go. We've got water in the nether. Don't think too hard about it. Let's nip back through the overworld. Where is my portal? There it is. Now, of course... Why does it spit me up here? Of course, we can take our massive terraforming flame clouds of destruction and dial it up to 11. Ignis Infernum. This is the thing I said where if you're running a public server, please turn this off. It is very strong. It is also very hard to make. This is very hard to make. In fact, you are more likely to do this wrong than you are to do it right. There are a lot of requirements here. There's some very expensive chemicals. It's an exact recipe, and you need a ridiculously high temperature. But if you can make Ignis Infernum, well, it's best if I just show you. I'd like to note that just like Philosophers, you can stop it breaking blocks with alchemical salt, and just like Philosophers, you can mix it with other chemicals. But Ignis Infernum is basically the same thing as Philosophers, but bigger. Didn't want to fall in the hole. That kind of ruins the whole cinematic effect. Thanks. It's still growing. I'm not going to stop it. I mean, actually, if it reaches this, I'll stop it. Should it reach that? I don't think it will. I hope not. We can cross over, because I'm in creative mode. This is safe. Oh, it stopped. Okay. So, like I said, bigger. There's terraforming, and then there's this. Would you like to delete a mountain? Would you like to turn a mountain into a snow biome? Would you like to turn a snow biome into a mountain? The possibilities are endless. Yeah. Now, you can stop that with damping powder. Another reason, keep damping powder around so someone can't do this. Stop that before it gets too big. I'm just going to delete this because I'm scared of it, honestly. One more thing with these terraforming chemicals. That is sand. Is if you mix in quicksilver with some of these chemicals, so similarly to how we added alchemical salt to Philosophers to stop it destroying blocks, we can add quicksilver to any of the terraforming ones, like Aether, which makes a plains biome, or the one that makes a nether biome. So there's one quicksilver in here. And now if we right-click it, I am in a block. The sun is not gone. It will actually create blocks. So if you do the terraforming with quicksilver, it will still do the terraforming, but anywhere there's an empty space, it will create that biome's equivalent of a dirt block. So in snow, that means a snow block. For the nether, that means soul sand. For water, for the ocean one, that means clay. But now I've got a way to fill up terrain. I'm in a block again. And again, you could combine this with a full oxygen flame cloud or even an Ignis Infernum flame cloud and just, make just a giant clay cube. Why not? Have fun with that. So you really can terraform very, very quickly using the awesome power of these chemicals. And just do whatever the heck we like, really. That's a shape. I wasn't really going for anything in particular there. This is the bit where I look at the book and try and remember if I'm forgetting something. I need to remember if I've forgotten. I think we're fine. Alright, so that is the stuff you can do with alchemy. You can mess with gravity, you can fly around, you can do terraforming on ridiculous scales and natures and just have fun with it. You can mass produce iron and diamonds or other metals or gems. You can be more efficient with your electricity, teleport it around, share it with other people on the server if you're in multiplayer. You can create what are basically chemical weapons and just have fun with that. And with whatever you're going to do with that, that's a thing. You can use chemical weapons in an automated ways to kill things at a mob farm. You can create the nether in the overworld and spawn nether mobs there. I mean, really, the world is your oyster, your chemical-based oyster. As you can see, it gets very, very powerful towards the end. Next videos are going to be about Technomancy, which has a very, very different gameplay style, and which I'm going to have to make the tutorial videos of right next to the giant dirt erection structure thing. I don't know. It sort of looks like a dinosaur, if you squint. No, it doesn't. Anyway, hope you enjoyed Alchemy. Hope you didn't lock yourself into Alchemy and only to realize that you hate Alchemy and wish you'd gone Technomancy. See you next time.